Okay. Hi, I am Dianora. You can call me Dee. I am from Italies, but I have been in the SCA since my first event was in 1989. And so I have been in for a long time. I keep telling people I've been in since I was 3, but that's not really the truth. I have lived in West Kingdom and Onstiora and the Mid-Realm, Norcio, Meridies, and I've been making bobbin lace for about 30 years. I've been teaching it almost that long, and it's probably one of my passion, I would say, because I really do love it, and I just like to see other people love it and enjoy it too. So um, I had originally planned to do this as a introductory, get everything ready class, and then to do hands-on, but I'm not able to do that tonight. So I figured that I would just go through some of the basic information, and then I would go through my handout on the prequel, which was like basic materials that you would need. Then if anyone is interested in doing a class, I'm happy to take their name. And I do online classes of bobbin lace. I just finished an 8-week class. So I'm happy to set something up if people want to learn. And of course, with the wonders of Zoom, we can do it anywhere. So first thing I want to say about bobbin lace is that it's really hard to find any kind of initial date when it started. There are when did people start twisting thread together to make things pretty? It's hard to find anything like that. It's believed that the needle lace types of lace were started in the Netherlands, and that the bobbin lace was started in Italy. And that's probably about as much as you get from the early history. There are a lot of different kinds of lace. No, tatting is not lace making. It's a different kind of lace. It's not bobbin lace making. And in the SCA, you're fortunate enough to have people who have learned to do all of these sorts of skills that are often missing. They're often gone. People just don't do them anymore. So it's easy to find someone who will teach you needle lace, or who will teach you punto and aria, which is lace where you it's called in the air, and you make a frame pattern, frame your pattern, and then you do stitches to make the design inside. I don't do that, as you can tell by my off description, but it's a beautiful kind of lace that I really hope I get a chance to learn sometime. You can do Redicello, which is when you take it's like hardanger, where you pull threads out and then you take the threads that are left and you make a design with that. You can do sprang, is considered a type of lace because it leaves a material with holes in it for a decoration. Knitting, you can do knitted lace. Tatting is not in period, and neither is crocheted lace. So there are lots of different styles that come out of those main ones I was just talking about. But with the period bobbin lace, you tend to see things that don't have grounds in them, which is when you see lace that has like mesh backs, that there is a lace built into it. The lace is usually made with plaits, which are braids that are then brought together and brought apart, twisted over. So it's pretty easy to learn the basics of it, but it's more difficult to learn the creativity part of it. It takes patience, and sometimes you don't have that. And it takes knowing to keep your bobbins pinned down so that the cats will not turn them over. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through my first handout that I give people when I teach the classes, and I am going to hang on just a minute. Sorry, it's not wanting to go. Okay. So I'm going to share this so that you guys can see what I'm looking at. So can y'all see that?
Coming in clear for me.
Okay, good. I'm a college professor, so I've had to teach on Zoom for the last year, and I have students who will wait until I get about 2 or 3 pages into something, then say, "Are we supposed to be able to see that?" And so yes, you were. So anyway, I wanted to talk about, again, with this original idea of getting people to actually do the lace, I wanted to talk about the tools that you need and how to find them, and how much it will cost. Like so many things, you can do lace very inexpensively and easily, and you can spend a whole heck of a lot of money on it, depending on just what kind of toys you like to have. So there are several tools that are required, and this is going to go over some of those basic materials and how you can either buy them or make them. And so we're going to talk about pillows, bobbins, thread, and miscellaneous equipment. I love the toys. I love anything, give me an electric winder just because it's a toy. I went out and I bought a pleating machine because I didn't have one and it was a toy. So you can really get into money with this, but you don't have to. So let me go ahead and go through some of this. So the first thing you need is a pillow, and a pillow is probably the hardest thing to get together or to find, because what you need is a surface that's very sturdy, that you can stick pins into and they don't come out, and that they don't pull down too much, because you want the pin where you're holding the lace to not move around. So in period, pillows were made of all kinds of things, often stuffed with hay or sand. If you will look in a little bit later, we'll see the cover of the new Modal Book, which is one of the few period books we have with lace patterns in it. And I have no idea how they make their lace on those pillows, because they look like just big, huge feather pillows, and they look like they would be just as soft as anything, but that's what they used. They also used bolster pillows, which are round and look like a Tootsie Roll, kind of, only a big one. And I even have a picture of one that's like a circle. It's open inside, like the Spanish ones are today. So the pillows have been made from hay, from sand, and then more recently from modern products like either foam or self-healing foam. And I'll tell you, carrying around a big bobbin lace pillow that's stuffed with hay or stuffed with sand really requires you to have some pretty good muscles. So these lighter pillows are really nice. So they come in a lot of different flavors and sizes, and I just made a list of some of them for you. And after I go over this, I'll go down and I'll show you the pictures. So a cookie pillow is just what it sounds like. It looks like a round cookie. It's round, it's fairly flat, it has a small dome on it, but not much of one. The benefit of cookie pillows is that they're sturdy, they have lots of room, you can move around with your bobbins. The bad thing about cookies is that if you are making any kind of yardage, like if you want to make something to trim a chemise, or to trim a dress, or to a coat or anything, every time you get to the bottom of the pattern, you have to pick it up with all the pins and move it back up to the top and get all those pins, keep them in the right place. So that can be difficult if you're doing something that is long and a long piece. And so that's why we have the roller pillows. Roller pillows are a pillow base with some kind of a roller on it, and so the pillow will roll, and then you put a stopper in it of some sort, and you do the lace that's on the pattern, and when you get to where you can't do it anymore, you just roll it again and start and go to where the lace is at the bottom, and then you roll it again. Excuse me. So the roller pillow is really, really good for almost everything. I use the roller pillow for most everything, unless you're doing a motif like a circle or a square or something. However, again, the cookie pillow is easier when you're learning, and it's also easier when you have something very complicated and larger. And again, I'll show you some of these in just a minute. So then you have the bolster pillow. It's a cylinder. It's often stuffed with sand or hay, or it can be a pool noodle. My husband makes bobbin lace pillows, and when he does the rollers and the bolsters, he uses pool noodles and wraps them in wool. So you can use it to make a motif or to make yardage. The benefit of them, of course, is that they have a bigger, usually they have a bigger surface than a roller pillow will. So you can do a larger motif, while they also move so that you could do the yardage. However, when it comes to tensioning, which is what you have to do when you're, and we'll talk about that in a minute, when it comes to tensioning, you pull on the bobbins. And if you don't have it set just right, the bolster pillow pops right out, and you have to reset the whole thing because you pull it out of the cradle. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to show you some of these pillows now. Maybe. Okay, so this is a bolster pillow right here on the left. It's hard to see. It was the only one I could find. I don't have a bolster pillow, so I grabbed this one off the internet. But again, you can just put it down and you just keep turning it to do it. Or if you had a motif on there, you would just work on the side that you had it pinned to. This right here is a cookie pillow. This is actually one of those horrific heavy ones because it's stuffed with hay. They're stuffed very, very hard. In fact, if you go to make a pillow yourself and you want to stuff it with hay, you probably want to drive over it with your car a couple of times so that you can break the hay down to where it's soft enough to stick in the pillow. This right here is a roller pillow. It's actually a travel pillow because this one can fold up, and this right here in the back is a handle. This right here is a handle that sits up, and so it'll fold into something that you can just carry with you. And then these two are both roller pillows. So again, they have the rollers, they have the little stopper, and you just keep turning and turning and turning. Now, it would be hard to do anything else on this one on the right-hand side, but this one on the left has a big enough bib that you could put a small motif on there and do it. So if you want to start doing this on your own and you want to do it without a lot of money and putting out a lot of money, because you don't want to spend a lot of money if you don't know if you like doing it yet, you can use insulation board. We get insulation board at the Home Depot here, and it's about that thick, and it comes in planks, and we just cut them down and cover them with an inexpensive fabric. And that's actually what I use for my teaching boards when I teach bobbin lace classes in person, back when we had in person. So this was these are just examples of what you can do. It costs almost nothing. The only thing you have to worry about with this is that if your pins are too long, they'll go out, and they'll go out through the bottom. So you just have to make sure that you put them in a slant. But again, this wouldn't cost you a couple of bucks maybe, and you could get going with it. So let me go back up. I had the pictures up as a separate file, but they disappeared. So, okay. So the bobbins, the purpose of the bobbin is to hold the thread and to keep the thread taut. And so they come in a variety of styles. It can be fun to collect them. I have a variety of them. I have glass bobbins that just sound beautiful when you work with them. Lots of different kinds of beautiful woods on them. And so two of the varieties, the main two varieties are the Midlands, the Spangled bobbins, and the Continental bobbins. And so they generally have these components right here. They have a head that holds the thread. And some will have two heads close together, and they're called double heads. And this is really good if you go to actually buy bobbins, to look for some that have this double head at the top, and I'll show you one in just a minute. To look at this one, I'm sorry, to buy the one with the double head at the top, because when you wrap your thread around it, you're going to do a loop and pull on that loop, and that will keep it from unlocking and unwinding while you work. Well, if you do that in a whole bunch of thread that's woven up on the head, it'll get lost, and it'll be hard to, it'll get tangled up, and it'll be hard to open it up to move the bobbin down. So if you put it up in that head, it's a lot easier to work with the bobbin because it's separate. So they have that, and that's where the thread is. The neck is right under the head that holds the thread. It's framed by the head on the top and the beginning of the shaft of the bobbin. The thread is wound onto the neck. The shaft widens at the end of the neck and continues to the end, and there is some sort of weight at the end. So in regular bobbins, in the continental bobbins, there's some kind of an actual weight, like it's a bulb at the bottom, or it's heavier at the bottom. In the Midlands or Spangled bobbins, those are the ones that you've probably seen that have the circle, the metal ring on the bottom, and they have beads on them. They can be very, very beautiful. Continental bobbins are period, and Midlands bobbins are not period. Doesn't really matter if you like the pretty ones, buy the pretty ones. But the other thing is, for a beginner, the Midlands bobbins with the spangles on the end are harder to handle because they tend to get caught unless you have more experience with moving the bobbins around. Okay, the Midlands are slender and straight with a ring at the bottom strung with beads, and that's what the weight is for the bobbin. Let's see. Continental bobbins have a different kind of weight, and there are a bunch of different varieties depending on the shape. Names like Belgian, French, Swiss, Danish, Bio, Dutch, Duchesse, Mechlin, and more. So they are more like the period bobbins, and the weight at the end can be all kinds of shapes. And again, I'll show you some of those in a minute. When I teach and put together kits for my classes, or when I recommend to people what type of bobbin to buy if they're just starting out, I recommend that I generally use the square bobbins. And I use the square bobbins because they don't roll around on the pillow like the round ones do. And it's easier to keep them in order and as you're getting used to doing it. My favorite is the Dutch double head and pearwood. I'll show you one in just a minute. It's an almost exact replica of an extant period bobbin. So let me go down here to the bobbins. Okay, so these are some of my bobbins, and these are hooded bobbins right here on the left. The hood, the wooden hood, covers the thread and keeps the thread from getting dirty. These are the little square bobbins that you can buy that I recommend for beginners. They're pretty inexpensive. You can get, I think, 16 of them for about $12. So that's really pretty reasonable. These are the double Dutch heads and pearwood, and those are my favorites. I've got some of these light ones and some darker ones. But if you look down here, this is what I was talking about, the double head on them. So when you do that little slip knot to keep your thread in place, by putting it in there, it's a lot easier to deal with than if you had to do it down in here, where you also have all of your thread. If you see this mess of thread right there, so it's easier to have that separate to be able to do it. And then these are called international bobbins, and they are or they're also called fancy squares. And they're squares, and so they don't move, but they're pretty. So it kind of depends on what you what you spend your money on. Um, but I like them to be pretty. So right here, these two right here are both Midlands bobbins. All of these over here were continental because you didn't have to add anything, and they all had a weight. They had the the little ball there, the heavier bottom there, the balls here, and the heavier bottoms here. So those are all the Danish bobbins or continental. And then these are the Midlands, and you see they have the metal ring with the spangles on them. These were hand painted. They were part of a gift exchange. But they're pretty. There's no denying that they're beautiful, and to see a bunch of them laid out on a pillow is just gorgeous. This one I put in because it's an example of using unique and exotic woods to make the bobbins, to turn them. And this one is also a Midlands. You can't see it, but it has a little hole down here at the bottom where you would put a spangle on. Because I don't use them, they were a gift and I kept them because they're so pretty, but I just haven't spangled them yet. These right here are two more types of the continentals. These have, it's hard to see it in here, but they actually have brass embedded in it. It's inlaid with brass, and so they're very pretty. This one also has the double head. You see the little double head right there, whereas this does not. These are pretty bobbins that are commemorative bobbins. You can use them, but they were painted to commemorate. I think that these commemorated Pennsic. Let's see. I think that these commemorated Pennsic, and someone brought them to me from Pennsic. But so anyway, those are different types of bobbins. So if you don't want to spend much money at all, you can make your own bobbins, and that's what these are over here on the right-hand side. These right here are simply skewers or popsicle sticks that you can buy in the craft store, and pony beads. So you put in the two beads here to make the neck where you're going to roll the thread, and then you put 3 or so down on the bottom to give it some weight, and there you've got a bobbin. You just put a little glue, let them sit, there you've got a bobbin. This right here, you can also wrap the thread around underneath the head of this old clothespin, and they sell these again in the craft store. So you can buy a package of these, use this for the thread, and use this as a Danish bobbin. It's heavy enough. It's heavy enough to hold the thread down. This one right here is a little Midlands bobbin. Again, you can't see the hole in it, but this is a little Midlands bobbin that was, let's see if I can get it up a little bit. There you go. This was actually made from wrapping paper. So you can get wrapping paper, and there's a pattern you can use. And right in here, the way the pattern is cut, it gives you that head right there. So it cuts a rectangle out so that when you roll it up very tightly, you have a place here where it's not as thick, and that's the head for the thread. And then this is what happens when you're married to an artist and you say, I need some bobbins quick. He made these bobbins out of just findings, the wooden findings that you can find. This is just the little tulip cups, and he painted them, and there's the little bee in the tulip, and they're just fun and whimsical, and I don't see them, but so you can be very creative. The point is that you can be very creative, even if you're just making them like this for yourself. So let's see. Okay, anybody have any questions? Okay. So to complete your kit, you'll want a pair of scissors, particularly small scissors with sharp tips. You'll want pins. You'll want some thin ones with a small head, like silk pins. I usually buy silk pins because they're strong, but they have a little tiny head. And the reason why you want some with a little tiny head is because if you have a very complicated pattern, you'll have lots of places where you put a pin in to hold the thread. And if they have the bigger heads, the ball heads, then you can't get them all to fit in there. They start going wonky. You also want some of the larger, stronger ball head pins, and you use those at the top where you're going to have more pressure because you're hanging your threads, and on the sides where you're going to pull against it more because you have made that, because it's on the edge of the pattern and you're going to be moving back into the center. So that's where you usually pull the most. Excuse me. You'll want a napkin, a cloth napkin, or a piece of cloth about that size. You use this for a cover cloth so that you place it under the bobbins while you work, and then you fold it up over your work and you pin it in so that you protect your work while you're not making lace. You'll want a ribbon or a piece of trim at least 1 inch wide and long enough to go from one side of your pillow to the other, because you'll use that to keep your bobbins in place. Remember earlier I mentioned cats. Cats love bobbins. They really do. And they love them even more when they can turn the whole pillow over and they're on the floor. And then you have, 60 bobbins that are all tangled up and you have to untangle them. If you put this piece of trim across it and pin it like every two bobbins, then they won't go anywhere. And if the cat dumps it over, all you have to do is pick it up and it's still there without it being all messed up. And then you also need your pattern, and I can talk about that at the end. So next is a brief discussion about a couple of ways you can make your own supplies. I mentioned some of that before with the bobbins. None of these are meant for long-term lace making. You'll want to go ahead and, if you like it, you go ahead and buy a bobbin lace pillow. In the long run, they aren't that expensive. And I mean, well, okay, so you can make them very, very expensive, or you can make them inexpensive. There's a place called Snow Goose that sells their pillows uncovered, but you can get them for $30 for decent pillows. And however, the round cookie that I showed you earlier, the black one, that one cost me $250. So it just depends on what you want and how much money you have to spend. But with this, you should be able to do it for about $10 or less. So again, I use that beadboard foam for pillows when I teach because it's lightweight, it's easy, people can throw it away if they don't want to do it. I usually buy the bobbins, those plain square ones that I showed you. I buy those from Amazon, and just include those in the kit. The thread that I use, the best thread for newcomers to use is I use number 30 crochet cotton. You can use number 10, but it's really big. And so it can be difficult to do the pattern unless you enlarge the pattern. But the size 30 is a really good fit for these patterns. And the reason why I use the crochet cotton is because silk will come off of the bobbins really easily, and linen will also is stiff, so it doesn't get wound on there very well, or it breaks. And what you don't want is to frustrate people when they're getting started with their lace making. You don't want to get them all up frustrated because they think they can't do it. So the crochet cotton is something that doesn't slip off as easily. It'll stay on the bobbins. You can pull on it and it won't snap. And when somebody is just an inch into lace is not when you want to be learning how to replace a broken thread. So that's why I use that size 30 crochet cotton. And it's inexpensive. You can get it in a ball like the size 10. Just look for the 30s. Okay, so to make a pillow, the pillows need to be material you can stick pins in without it falling apart. Covering it with a piece of fabric makes it smoother and easier to work on. So here are some suggestions. I already mentioned pool noodles. My husband uses these in the roller pillows he makes. If you remember the picture I showed you of the travel pillow, that's one of the ones that he made. You get the largest one you can find, preferably without a hole in the center. The thin ones don't work so well because you have to add a lot of padding to make them big enough to be functional. But if you get the big size, that makes a nice roller for a roller pillow. It's hard to find one that's big enough to make a bolster by itself, but you can make a bolster out of an oatmeal canister, a coffee canister, any kind of round canister that you can cover with fabric and then with wool and batting, and then put on a very tight cloth cover that you put on and you sew, and then you make it tighter so that it's very taut and the pins won't go anywhere. So let's see. Excuse me. You cover it with wool or heavy felt, and then make the final layer some kind of a tight weave cotton or twill that's not heavy like canvas, but heavy enough to not wrinkle and fall apart. Gather the ends and sew it down. So that's just some information. Now, what I have done with a bolster is after I made I found a basket that I liked, and then I cut the bolster to fit into the basket. And then you can stick it in, and if it's just a teeny tad big and you have to kind of push it in, it will hold the basket will hold it so that you can make lace and then turn it and make more lace, and then you just put the lace you've been working on and the bobbins and anything else, you put it in the other side of the basket and put a cover over it, and you're good to go. Again, not too expensive. You can get it at Goodwill, the baskets. And if it does tend to tip over, you can fill the bottom with something heavy, even some rocks or something, to keep it upright. Another thing that you can use is if you find swim floats or kickboards. We get a lot of funny looks because we'll go in and buy Walmart out of the kickboards, and when they go on sale, and they ask if we have a really big family, and we have to say no. But you can use those because they're that ethafoam, and you can use them as a pillow. You just cover them. If they're square, you cover them. If they're wavy, you can cut the wave off if it bothers you, and you've got a pillow after you put that piece of fabric on it. And you don't even have to worry about sewing the fabric on. You can actually put a pin in it to keep it on there. So that's another inexpensive way. When these go on sale, you can get them for a buck or two. Not very expensive at all. And then we already talked about the insulation and beadboard. I had mentioned the downside is that they are thin and pins will go through it. You can avoid that by putting two together. But if you do that, you don't want to glue it, because if you've got two pieces that are glued together and the pin gets stuck in it, the pin will go through into the second one, but then the pin might get glue on it. So when you pull it up, it'll mess up your lace. So if you're going to do something like this, you can clamp the edges, but don't glue it, especially in the center. Let's see. So here are two that I've seen, but I haven't tried, but I put them here because they're made with items most people have at home. But I just can't give you my opinion on them. The first one is towels. Some people say that if you take a towel and roll it up actually just as tight as you can, and then you put ties on the ends, and leave a little bit of a flap, that you will make it tight enough that it will hold the pins and you can make lace on it. I've talked to people who say this works great. To my mind, the fact that you have all the little loops on towels, the fabric that the towels are made out of, would make it kind of difficult. But it is something that you can try if you want to do it at no charge. And then the second one is that you can take a piece of corrugated cardboard, and it needs to be corrugated so that there's space and room for the pin to go in. But you can take this and kind of make a triangle out of it, and then pin on the threads and make lace. So this one, the second one looked a lot more reasonable than the first one did, but they're both there if you want to try it. Okay, so we already talked some about bobbins and what they're used for, and here are just again ones that you can make yourself. Clothespins, you can do the spring ones, or you can wrap the thread around and then let it close, or you can do the pegs that like I showed you. The skewers and the pony beads, you may want them about 6 inches long, and then you just glue the beads on, make sure the beads are the right size. And if you use any findings, that's the other thing, is make sure it's the right size for your stick. So okay, so down here are some places that I go for bobbin lace supplies. Laces has books and bobbins and pillows and everything, as does Provo. Snow Goose makes but Laces doesn't have a whole lot. Snow Goose makes the pillows, the inexpensive ethafoam pillows, but they don't do much beyond that. They have a little bit, but not a lot. Van Sciver is well known and has been around for a long time. They have lots and lots of books, lots of different kinds of pillows and bobbins. They're just kind of a one-stop shopping. And then Tied to History has some beautiful threads in it. And I think, oh, and so just the last thing here would be to show you these two. These are two different kinds of bobbin stands. These right here, you put them on a pillow, they're table stands, and you can put the pillow on it and it puts it at a little bit of an angle, which is what you need when you want to learn how to make it. You'll want to put it at a bit of an angle. This is a folding travel stand. This opens up and it actually folds down, so that you can carry it with you, and then you can just make your lace. You don't have to worry about looking for a piece of table somewhere that someone's not using or anything. Okay, so y'all have any questions about that? All right, so then the next thing I wanted to show you is I wanted to show you some books that you there we go, to show you some books that you may want to use, and to give you some suggestions on the books. Okay, just a second. And books are there. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to show you some different books, that some that I've used, some that well, I think most of these I've used. So Lace: A History by Santina Levy. Santina Levy is a lace historian, and this is full of really, really incredible stuff. I will say that only the first bit of it applies to our period, but there is enough in there to justify the cost of the book. And this book runs, you can get it on eBay or Amazon, just depending. You can get it. I don't think it's being published new anymore, but I could be wrong. And I think that when I got it, it was either 1 1/4 or 150. So it tends to be a bit pricey, but it, like I said, it really has a fantastic information in the front. I included The History of Lace by Mrs. Bury Pallister. The History of Lace is kind of an old standby. This was actually first printed in 1869, but it's still one that people go to look at and get information from. This right here is called the New Modal Book, and the way that I have this is it's in a 3-volume set, and one volume is the actual one volume is a copy of the actual book that was printed. The second one is the book in English, and I think in French or German. It's in a couple of languages. And then the third thing is a packet of patterns which have already been put together and made and are ready for you to use. Now, it's hard to find this book. I have been told that you can now get this book in the Arizona database, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Oh, and if I didn't say it before, when I say the pricking, that's what you call the pattern. The pattern that you use is called a pricking. So when you get this book, you have, if you buy it, you have those 3 items that come with it, and it comes in a little folder. I want to talk about this book for a minute, because this is another one of those things that I just get all excited about. This book is made by, it was published by a woman named RM, and that's all the information we have about her. And it's got a 2 or 3 page introduction. It's a small book, so it's not big like ours are. And then pages of patterns. What's so neat about this is that while we have modal books that have fancy patterns in them and have, these beautiful pieces of lace, this book was written by a master lace maker for her students. So this was written by somebody in period who is teaching her own students how to make this lace. And so the patterns are very easy to follow. And she even puts on them how many pairs of bobbins you need to make the piece of lace. Now, if this was something that you picked up at Walmart and it was a new book, that's usually in there. But back then, and to have it here, so the pieces of lace that we're interpreting, we can look at this and we can see how it was done originally. And that's that to me is just fascinating. And those 2 or 3 pages of written print that she put together is the only voice we really have of an actual voice of somebody who is a lace maker from in period. And I think that's just invaluable. So that's the new modal book. And like I said, I've been told that it's in the Arizona archives. The set that I have, the person who put it together was Claire Burkhart. Okay. So these are some books you can use if you want to teach yourself lace. And I actually taught myself how to make lace by using this book by Doris Southard, this book by Bridget Cook, and then later on the Stott book. So these 3 books I used. Some people, like one better than the other. One of them, I think it's the Torchon Lace Workbook, shows the diagrams in color with the different bobbins in color, and that can be very helpful. But you can get these online now, and they are not expensive. And you can, start practicing, because it tells you how to do all of it. Some of them even tell you how to make a pillow in there, how to make a regular roller pillow. So if you want to start on your own, I would recommend one of these books. I've not used this one. I have it. I just haven't used it much. But these 3 I have. There is also
a question. I was just kind of Googling as you were talking, and I'm not certain if it's the same book, but on the Modal Book, I came across a site that has the new pattern book 1561 with some English translation and indexing.
Mhm.
Seems to have patterns listing all the bobbins as well. And it's got the entire book. I can post the link to the chat so that you can see it, but I don't know if it's the same book. I don't know enough about bobbin lace making.
Mhm. Yeah, if you post it, I'll take a look at it, because like I said, I've got the set, and it'd be great, because that one and La Pompe have been so hard for people to get, and yet they haven't been reprinted in so long.
It's from the Early Modern Embroidery and Lace Pattern Book series. And
okay.
it's by RM and edited with modifications by Helen Howe.
Okay, so the one I have was edited by Claire Burkhart, but yes, RM is the name we have of it for it.
And this is a 2018 publication.
Okay.
And it looks like the full thing's online, but I wouldn't know.
Okay, I'll look at it as soon as I get off of the save, share screen. But thank you for finding that. That's wonderful.
Okay, I'll post it in a bit.
because really one of the things that I try to do as a lace maker in the SCA is when I teach lace, I use period lace patterns. I don't start with modern patterns. I teach period lace patterns, and my patterns that I use come from that book because they are simple. There are some that are more complex, but they have some that are very, very simple in there. So hopefully that's it. I'll look at it in a second. Okay, so there is a woman named Gillian Dye. She's from England. And she did years and years ago, she did a book called Elizabethan Lace. And she then has done bobbin lace braid, which is how we make the lace with the braids. And she did a 4-book or 5-book series of edgings and the Ipswich lace and all of that. She's really well known. If you ever go out to IOLI, which is the International Order of Lace Makers Inc. I think it used to be the Old Lace Makers, and I didn't like that very much. But if you go to one of their conventions, she teaches, and I had a chance to take a class with her for a week. And she's just wonderful. Another person who does lace modern, where she studies period laces, but is alive now as a modern person, is Rosemary Shepherd's Early Lace Workbook. This is another very good one. It is very good diagrams, and she shows where she gets the lace from. Some of it, you know, you could kind of go back and forth and say, well, I don't know if that's really lace or if it's something else from the pictures. But for the most part, they're really good. And she traces it back to the 15th century. Which is early. You know, usually you think of laces starting in the 16th, but she traces it back. She may actually trace it back to the 14th century. And I found a picture online of a set of vestments that has a piece of lace that is just like a piece out of the Modal Book, and it was dated in the 1400s. So that was fascinating. Anyway, this is another book. If you can get a copy of it, it shouldn't be as hard to get a hold of, but I bought mine quite a while ago. Really good book, really, really good book. And then this right here, this is the Arizona lace. Well, it's not lace, it's the Arizona patterns. Are y'all familiar with this? Okay. Let me see if it'll let me go there. It'll probably go on. Okay, can you guys still see it? Sometimes when it changes a screen, it'll take it away. But anyway, this has PDFs of all kinds of things in it. And these are the different sorts of things that it has. But it has manuscripts. It has different kinds of lace. This is American altar laces, Irish crochet lace, which again is post-period for us, the crochet lace, a treatise from 1891. But it also has in here the Modal books, which have lace patterns, and it has La Pompe 1 and La Pompe 2, which are not, they're clearer and easier to make than some of these patterns that were in the Modal books, because those were usually made and done as a in honor of somebody, and so the patterns were real complicated, and you can't even be sure that it was really a lace maker who put together those patterns. It could just be someone's imagination. Just like when you look at clothing, you can't always guarantee that that's a real lace pattern, because it's, you know, the artist's rendering. But if you go here and just scroll down this, you can get in here and stay here a long, long, long time. There is all kinds of interesting stuff in here. So apparatus for stamping lace pattern. So that will take you to the let's see. That will take you to the the Arizona. It's University of Arizona Archives. And they have things besides lace. They have weaving and sewing and embroidery and all kinds of other things in there. So like I said, you can kind of lose yourself down that rabbit hole really easily. Okay. So any questions?
Doesn't look like there's many in the chat. Does anyone here have any? It looks like we have Marina's hand is raised.
Oh, sorry, that was from earlier.
Oh,
Let
okay.
me
I'll lower
look
my
at
hand.
this. I'll look at this, Marina, and see if this is the same one.
It seemed to want to open up on page 69 no matter what I did with the page. So it might have opened up in the middle and then it refused to let me move it on my iPad.
Yes, this is the book. This is, let me see. Does it have the did you see the translation?
Go there. I thought I did.
Let's see.
Yeah, I see it in German on page 13. And I see an intro. So they have the images of the 1561 preface.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so this would be a great thing to you know, to bookmark and just print off what you need from here. This has the patterns, and I can show you that the pattern that I use for when I teach a lot out at Gulf Wars.
If you click on the bottom right hand corner where you see 4 little diagrams, it flips all the pages up for you to see.
Ah, okay, thank you. So yeah, this is the original up in here, and that's I just love reading that because I just love I like connecting modern to past, and this I love. So let's see if I see it. But you can just print these off, and what you would do is you print them off on a pale paper like a light blue or a light green, and then you could put you could put a clear plastic coat over them, like you would put over you know, a presentation paper or something. And if you do it with cardstock, it'll make it stronger. But you want it to be a nice light pale color so it's easy on your eyes. Huh. Well, I'm not seeing it, but I'm going through pretty fast. It looks like this. That's one of them. This right here. That's one of the ones that I use.
We don't see your screen.
You don't? Okay. Let's see. It's the one on page 47. Okay. On this one right here. This is the one that I start out people on. So, and then there's a similar edging to that I use as well. So So are there any other questions that I can ask or I answer? I can ask questions. Any other questions I can answer or information I can give you? Does anyone want a copy of the handout?
Yes, please.
Okay. I know that some people posted them, but okay,
if you'll put your contact info in the chat box.
I'll get it to you. I started out in West Kingdom. Okay. Catherine Throckmorton.
And if we're just in the asking the final questions phase, I'm going to stop the recording here, okay?
Yeah, that's